What did I teach you?
You are Duke of New York. You're a number one.
I can't hear you.
You are the Duke of New York. You're a number one.
Peace, everybody. Can everybody hear me? Everything good? Please type it into the chat if you can. Excellent. Please, on your end, make sure everything is muted, but you could always write into the chat anything that you want to say. I hope everybody's been well. A lot of stuff in flux, a lot of stuff changing. A lot of it looks like it's for the best, though. You know? Anybody have any questions about anything before we start? Yeah, there's just a lot going on, bro. But also, this is also happening at a time where we're still technically, according to how they enumerate time and check it out, it's still technically 2024 to them. Not even really like it's really 2024 at all, but you know what I'm saying? Like, it's still that to them really until March. And we'll get into why that is specifically, but that's why we refer to it as true year. So they're getting everything that they could get done or not done between now and the actual beginning of the whole cycle for them. Islam, yep. So naturally, they're at a crossroads because huge aspects of their infrastructure is being whittled away publicly. But the way it's set up is what you call a grift is not working the way that they wanted it to. So it's creating a blowback situation because they really weren't prepared for the public to rebel against any type of fictional puppet that up until now they've seen to be able to use to keep everybody, motivated towards what they want them to be motivated towards. To the point now where they're using, if you notice, there's a preponderance of melanated women that they're throwing at you that are really railing against the system in general. Whether that be Joy Reid, who just got a show canceled, Letitia James, the new one, Crockett. I think that's her name, Crockett. She's big. They really pumping her. They even dusted Kamala off and gave her a couple of minutes or whatever because they want to have this push that the oppression that's being inflicted on melanated people by not allowing money to go to everybody else but them. So they're really not feeling that because, like I said, most of them have been making money off of the bureaucratic industrial complex, which acts as the hub between the military industrial complex, the entertainment industrial complex, the pharmaceutical industrial complex, the weapons. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's the interface. The bureaucracy was the interface for them to do that because they could put people in play that technically could not be voted out because they were appointed by people in a sense for lifetime positions, which is why you hear them also talking about term limits. So What they're trying to do is say that it's unconstitutional, that he takes money away from these institutions or these organizations, because these organizations have been using the 14th Amendment to be able to operate as persons in the United States, aka Rome, aka the District of Columbia, to then launder the money through their own private bank, which is the Federal Reserve, which then was hooked up to the real exchange, which is at Downing Street in London, which then gets transported out to the Vatican, right, in Italy, which then gets kicked upstairs to the Club of Rome and the like Scandinavian, like Swiss, them type of peoples. You know what I mean? Like the tall whites. That's kind of the hierarchy in Geneva, because that's allegedly where the entity they call us Satan actually lives. They're saying that they believe that because there's a Bible verse. It's either a Bible verse or I forget. It's some obscure passage where this dude from a place called Antioch, basically in the Bible, it said that Satan lived at such and such a place where such and such died at Antioch or whatever. And then when you look at it, what that is today, it turns out to be Geneva, which makes sense because that's where CERN is at. So in their understanding, Satan is the Lord of the air, right? So he's an air god. So that means he could be everywhere at once. However, the entity that they're referring to is Satan. Because remember, at one time, Satan was Saturn to them. Remember, we talked about that last week. Saturn was Satan. The seven rings of Saturn represent, okay, imagine Saturn in a flat plane, right? You're looking at it from the top down. What are you going to see? You're going to see the same thing you see when they show you the pictures of the flat Earth. It's going to be the same circles within circles. You understand? It's going to be like circles within circles. When you look at a picture of Atlantis, it's going to be the same thing, right? So if you have a bird's eye view of Atlantis, a bird's eye view, I mean, a picture of Atlantis, or what they say Atlantis look like, a picture of Saturn, right, from the planet Saturn from the bird's eye view, you're going to see the circle in the middle and then the rings, right? And then you look at, let's say, a teardrop, a drop of water. It's all going to make the same symbol, right? Because it's all the same energetic symbol that we're being conveyed to. Yeah, another name for the Lord of the Air is Maitreya. You're right. Who they saying that before Barack, one of his alter egos, one of his personalities was the Maitreya, who popped up in Kenya. If you type up Obama as Maitreya, you'll see that. But that's another story. Anyway, all of that Saturnian worship has created different versions of the same entity that is then venerated or worshipped and then used as fuel for whatever earthly thing they're trying to do. So if I want to go to war against you, I'm going to invoke, the power of Aries, or you know what I mean. If I want to entice you, then I'm going to, invite, Venus or whatever it is, right? So all of these former beings that now have been disembodied, right, and exist as what we see as wandering stars, or what they're calling as planets that allegedly orbit around us, right? They still have effect on the physical world in the context that we have learned how to navigate them and use them, right, to propagate our own will on earth. You understand? Thus giving them access in a way to us through that mechanism, which then creates a symbiotic relationship. Think like Spider-Man and Venom, you know? It's the same type of situation. That's our relationship with this reality. See what I'm saying? Like it's a part of us, but it's not really. You know what I mean? We're the most originy to it, right? And we're still not even really, you know what I'm saying, from this aspect of it in its present context, being third density. We was here when it was in the 11th density, you know what I mean? Or the 12th, or whatever was the highest. And then as it fell, we experienced all of the different relative possibilities of what the reality would be. That's why when you look at history, it's so varied. You have like a fantasy period where it's like knights and all of that, and then you got like a industrial period, then you got like a wild wild west period, then you got like a pre agricultural period, then you got like a prehistoric dinosaur period, and then it's like a lava period. You know what I'm saying? Like there's a lot of different epochs in one place. You know what I'm saying? For it to be in its present context 6,000 years old. You see what I'm saying? That's where it all starts to go off the rails, you know? So the only way you could say it's 6,000 years old would be for you to look at it from the perspective of this present incarnation that we happen to incarnate into it now happens to be that more than the reality itself, because the reality itself doesn't have any time. If we weren't here in the physical, it would still exist. You know what I'm saying? Like if none of us was here, which there is a reality or a time frame or a timeline in which that's true, where everything is just like here, but there's nobody here. You know, we see movies and stuff about this, right? There's a conspiracy that says that all of the movies that we're actually watching are funneled to us through something we call the entertainment industry retrieved from the Vatican. This thing they say it's called the chronovisor. And with this, they're able to look back and look into alternate spectral realities and stuff. And somehow these niggas tapped into stuff like in a Truman Show. And so the conspiracy says that what we're watching, like we was watching Cheers and Friends and all this type of stuff, that's actually us looking into that reality at those people existing without them knowing. And the actors that we see now in this reality are playing those people. You understand? Yes, indeed, brother Lenny. Time lensing technology. That's exactly how you could frame it. So, in that context, then time as a predictable variable is only constant if we are. You know what I mean? Because there was a time when we did not exist, like in this third density, like we understand it now. And there'll be another time where we don't. But within all of those, in between those times, right, the other times still existed simultaneously. And so this is where the variation of stories and experience, you know what I mean, dream time, um, oral history. This is how all of this is passed down to the last thing, which is why it was important for them, the proverbial them, to disassociate us particularly, us, the melanated so-called origines of the Americas, to disassociate from any other timeline or time period. However, if you dress us up in any of the garb of any of these people, of any of these places, of any of these times, we look like the original people who existed in those places at those times in those garbs. You see what I'm saying? Because essentially it was us. who, like I said, for one time was gone. And that's how you keep seeing like different statues of people that you see thing. But it's very interesting that you only really see that for people who they say are famous, right? I'm pretty sure there's those of us who are into this who have gone to different museums or read different books or whatever and seen images of people who look like us directly. But as a collective, we tend to look at that usually from the perspective of somebody that's already in the public eye as famous. So then the tendency then to find variables of them in different time periods, you see what I'm saying? Or people who look similar to them, you see what I'm saying, becomes more acceptable than if we all was in our crib or we all went to the library and stuff like that and just started actually seeing us, the actual pictures of us in these places, you know what I'm saying, just or whatever, and being in that culture, it would throw their whole game plan off. So that's the whole thing about understanding like where you are, you know what I mean, and the fact of us constantly being pit against the continent of Africa or the continent of Africa being pitted against us in whatever form or fashion that puts us in a position to always have to defend our natural position of being people who were, you know what I mean, always from here. But like I say, even if you were to take a picture of somebody from Africa from the 1800s and then take somebody from America, let's say Holland from the 1800s, it might be a little similar, but they would look like phenotypically different people. So this also extends to the understanding of when they say, oh, well, the Africans were the ones who sold their own people into slavery. That phrase to me comes from a perspective of not really understanding how huge the continent of so-called Africa is, or Al Kibulan really is. It's bigger than you can imagine. You know what I'm saying? Just like the United States is actually bigger than you can really imagine. You know what I'm saying? Within the United States alone, you have the temperate zone or the temperate or the the ecological and geological zone of almost every other region in the world. So like if you came from a desert people, there's a desert place where you could be in the United States and live like that. If you came from a forest, like cold type people who um lived, you know what I mean, like that, there's a place in the US you could live like that. If you came from tropical people, there's a place in the United States where you could literally live like that. You understand? That's very different from the rest of the world. That's what makes it also unique. Because it basically has a piece of every other place in the world in it already. Whereas um, the continent of Africa, as you could see, you know what I mean, was actually one and the same in terms of how it was all kind of structured, how we can kind of piece it together, being structured. So to say that these Bantu people who went to war with, let's say, Ashanti people, which didn't happen, but let's say that they were the people, they were not the same people. Or let's say the Western African um, Bambara, right, who is, let's say, going to war with an East African Ethiopian, when they're fighting each other, they're not looking at each other as the same people. You understand? Because they're not looking at each other from a racial perspective in that moment. They're looking at each other from a national or tribal, you see what I'm saying, warlike perspective. So they're not looking at it, oh, well, you're the same color as me. Why are we fighting? They're looking at it like, I'm Hausa. You see what I'm saying? You're Tutsi. You know what I'm saying? We got beef. You dig what I'm saying? You're tall. I'm small. You know what I mean? We got. I'm tall. You're small. You're not human. We got beef. You see what I'm saying? It's not even the color thing. It's now they're dealing with in that point, they was even dealing with genetics now. You see what I'm saying? You had to be a certain height or else they'll kill you. So so-called Africa has been dealing with that. So the people that they was selling into slavery was not like literally their own people, unless you had like court intrigue where you had niggas that was like trying to get rid of a prince so they could take control or whatever. So they set the prince up to be kidnapped, and then you had stuff like that. But for the most part, the people they was selling was people they was already at war with, or prisoners of war that they had in surplus and wasn't going to convert or do whatever they wanted them to do. So they put them on boats or whatever, and or sold them to markets. You see what I'm saying? That wound up on boats, that wound up in different other into other markets, and then thing. But to have a whole, let's say, human cargo, human trafficking thing, the way that you got today, you see what's happening today. They're finding tankers of people. You see what I'm saying? Screaming and shit at the ports and all of that. So imagine doing that back in the days, and we don't even know where these people come from. They're opening up containers and it's piled with bodies and stuff like that. You understand what I'm saying? So imagine what they was doing back then. Yet the proof that we have of them doing it back then is not to the scale that they're saying, and it was more in the context of people taking people from port to port, as opposed to a whole transatlantic situation. You see what I'm saying? Because remember, these were people who had taken over from the people who was already running shit. So the only way they could really run the shit was to have people who were left over helping them by whatever means they were helping them by. You see, as opposed to, so they didn't really know. Basically, they didn't really know what they was doing. That's why you could have the Spanish Armada getting shut down by the British Navy. See what I'm saying? Like how would you had an armada? How is it that you got shut down by a little group of ships because you had better seamen who understood the concept of naval warfare? You see what I'm saying? Because they had been left over and trained by Moorish generals and stuff who had already been doing that. But like I said, the problem was they were caught up in the usage and the lack of skill of the incoming people who were now taking over. So it took them a few hundred years to figure it out. You know what I mean? Give me a second. One second. So right now, you have these people who are having problems because of the whole um, system that they're using basically to audit everybody. You know what I mean? This system they're referring to again as Doge. So when you look up what this administration is doing, they're kind of using a lot of old Moorish law type talk. You know what I mean? In their view. You know what I mean? Yeah, here we go. So the Doges, right, back in the days were the Venetian oligarchs who were the money changers or the mouthpieces for the so-called black nobility. You understand? The black nobility, which was now retreating due to the establishment, the further establishment of the papal, what they call the papal dynasties, which were now trying to take more land or more control from the so-called black Venetians, but they was also financing that. You know what I'm saying? They financing their own, so they see they falling. So at the same time, what they decide to do is fund their own destruction, so they could still make money off the back end by eventually assuming Roman, new Roman dignitaryship. So the Doge of Venice was the highest ranking official in the Venetian Republic from the 8th to the 18th century. You understand? So this is an old Moorish title, right? Going back to the 8th century, all the way up to what they call in the 18th. The title Doge comes from the Latin word dux, right? Or du, or duke, right? Which then comes from the old Moorish term ducal, right? Which means leader. The Doge was the head of the state and the head of the Venetian oligarchy. The Doge was the symbol of the Venetian sovereignty and independence. Election. The Doge was elected for life by the ruling families of Venice. The election process was complex and involved multi rounds of voting. The Doge was required to take an oath called the Promissione, the Promissicione, which limited their public and private behavior. The first Doge of Venice was Paolo Lucio Anafasetto, according to the traditional accounts. The last Doge of Venice was Ludovico Manin, who fled in 1797, which was a heavy year. In the Byzantine Empire, the title Doge was also given to the governors of the provinces, right? So we know Doge as as what they're telling us. But again, just like the term tariff, now, this is going back to melanated rulership, but also Republican, see, Republican rulership, which again led to the rise of the so called revolution that happened amongst this so called black bourgeoisie or bourgeoisie, who split into another faction called the Black Jacobins or Jacobites. There's a book by C.L.R. Lewis called The Black Jacobins, and it gets into all of that. These are the people, the royal families that was tied up in the secession of Desaligny and Christophe, and their relationship to the Moors of the Holy Roman Empire, who was at war trying to side with them against Napoleon, right? Because it was one big family thing. So for them to be using this this acronym again, Doge, as their way of doing it, and then what they're doing, right, which is then taking an account of what they're doing. That's essentially a position that Elon Musk is in. However, he don't run the government. He can't run the government. See what I'm saying? Because he doesn't have the um, clearance to be able to run things the way people saying he do. They all at the beck and call of whatever this dude want to do. You understand? Everybody say, "Oh, Trump is being manipulated." They're all manipulated to a degree. However, what you're seeing in this time, right, is the coming to terms of the generations that benefited from the last upheaval. These people were able to come into a vast wasteland, basically, and through preparation and education, they were what you're looking at basically is the first corporatized class of human beings on earth. Because remember, at this time, everything is being made by a specific group of people who seem to be able to have come into control, right, of a time period or a place or places, and they were able to establish themselves to such a degree of wealth that then they were able to then dictate how that wealth was going to facilitate the world as we understand it today. So they paid for education. They paid for, you understand, they paid for so-called waterworks. They allegedly built all of these buildings, which they didn't do. They did all of this stuff, right? All to create an ideal place for the descendants of these people, right? Who were now moving into this battleground that we call the United States, whatever, under the context of the history that they had now been given. Whether it was real or not was irrelevant. I'm saying prior to that, you had an imperial dynasty, right, on one side of the planet that had to not only be crippled, it had to be put into almost a dependent state by 1820 when they invaded. You know what I mean? That being Haiti, right? And they got, just like they did in the islands of Hawaii, they did the same thing to the people in Haiti because they broke apart their imperial forces, which then led the holdings that they had in other nations, like the debt that France owed to them, the debt that whoever owned to them. You know what I'm saying? Like, people don't know there was a deep relationship between Haiti and Poland, you know, because of the fact that the soldiers from the Republic went and shut all of the colonial, what was left of the colonial forces down. But remember, these colonial forces are the same remnants of the Roman papacy in bed with the new world banking class that was now using decoy and proxy economics to be able to destabilize what was left of the colonial empires, where they now could still have a foothold in the burgeoning place, right? That would then allow them to still maintain access to the resources that they could no longer just take. You understand? Yeah, but they just, so that's good you said that, brother Lenny. Brother Lenny said Capital Bank is holding all of Haiti's gold. Yeah, right, ransom. But the thing about it is, all of the gold in the United States, we had talked about this back in '95, that the gold had already been taken out of Fort Knox, and part of the scam in doing that was the 9/11 thing, and they showed us they was doing it in the movie in Die Hard when they stole all the gold uh after the bomb threat. So all of this is just cyclical stuff. So the flag from Haiti, I found this in the library one day in some obscure book, and it's from the Frangat Bram Moltentier Hand Atlas der Unstatistik Stuttgart 1862. And it says that the imperial flag of Haiti was white with a horizontal flag and the green square with the green flower. The green flower is the Egyptian lotus, right? So this is what I'm saying with the whole mind situation about displacing us as people and what they're really doing and how they keep using Moorish science and Moors in general as a means to, again, facilitate a control vector over how we view Moorish culture, Moorish society, when it's still figuring itself out. It's still waking itself up to the aspect of people actively now taking it serious, right? As a consciousness, like Moor's been here. like the prophet said, as an example, it was going to dwindle down to nothing. You know what I mean? And it did. Just like the empire, you know what I mean? On this side of the world, like to the point, people, you show this flag to somebody now, people be like, oh, now that's fake. That's not real. So again, I'm showing you the book you can get if you can find it in German. You did, to be able to figure it out for yourself. So if that's the case, again, if you have an empire, remember that means you have a kingdom, right? And a dominion that you govern specifically. You have a territory of land that you've already been annexed that has its own water structure, its own institutions that allow it to exist. Claiming jurisdictional land over stuff like over it in a technical sense is not really showing what they would consider jurisdictional thing. They still going to look at it as a somewhat occupational situation. That's why Charles, you know what I mean, as an entity, right, or a succession of people, as you say, was beneficial in the reunification of our, let's say, ancient time and modern time, going from the modern, excuse me, the classical time into a Renaissance period, in which now everything that was gone is now being redistributed and re-examined in a new form. Like the whole concept of gravity that they giving credit to Newton, and I mean, come on, man. Like, how you mean to tell me so people was building pyramids and they didn't understand what gravity was or what it applied to or whatever? This is what I'm saying. But more than that, it's also bringing up the fact that people like this, if we had grown up knowing, had such an impact on both sides of the world into our modern day. Because remember, the wealth, when they talk about old money and the wealth, this is the money they talking about. The money of the old world. The money of the old world, technically all was funneled to those old families through the Colon family, aka the Collins family. All colonial business went through the Colons and probably still does. Cristobal, you know what I mean, was just the errant messenger boy or project that they had fulfilled up to that point to be able to use him to do the things that he did. But essentially, he wasn't such a monumental part of their imperial circumstance that um, they cared about him after. See what I'm saying? By 1506, they had got rid of everybody that had anything really to do with anything to do with anything that was a part of that exchange. You can read the book Tom Quinn by Meredith Quinn, and he gets into that specifically. They made sure, you dig? And so all of the technology and preservation of information that came from that period, let's say from the time that Charles assumed the throne down there with the Incas, and then you think of all of the murder and all of the wars and all of the stuff that led then up to the next conflict, which we'll say is in 1776, which is probably the end of the so-called Millennial Reign, which is why they seen it as independence. Understand? Because maybe 100 years before that, these Moors were still enslaving these people by the masses. None of them were free. You understand? Yet in the domains of these Moors, you had these types of places. Like this is the Corn Palace of the Mohawks. You see the Moorish head right here of the Sheik, aka the Sheik or the chief, right? The Corn Palace. All of these people, all of their clothes is made by Hugo Boss. I don't know if you know, but Hugo Boss at the beginning or towards the middle of the Civil War was the ones that were supplying the clothes to the newly enslaved contraband, aka enslaved black people. All them slave clothes you see them wearing, that was all Hugo Boss. All of the clothes that the soldiers was wearing, that was Hugo Boss. From the Civil War to the World War One, World War Two, Hugo Boss. So all of this shit right here is probably one of them. Hugo Boss or Valentino. You can read about Coco Chanel and how she was funded by the Nazis and all of that. So these palaces, these malls, these places had now fallen into abandonment, right? And so because they couldn't use the land, what they started to do was take warehouse receipts on the buildings, on the structures. Then they would insure them. You see what I'm saying? And then whoever was the one in charge or whatever, who owned the tax lien or whatever, he would be the one who founded it. Just like back in the story of Noah and Cain, and after the deluge and what's his name had been kicked out, he wound up walking the world and wound up into a city, and then from there he named it Canaan, or he named it whatever it was, Urdu, or whatever. And then that became the first city. So this is how cities are founded. Cities, when they say founded or erected, that's what they're talking about. They're going to places that were already there, that were already peopled, and they just um, repurpose them. So these types of places, as great as they are, once they were used up, once they had enough of energy, once they had enough energy and all of that done, used up, you know what I mean? They decide, okay, well, we good now, so let's get rid of it before somebody wake up, somebody do the knowledge to it, you know what I mean? And then they destroy it. See what I'm saying? And then they put something very bland and very non-interesting in its place. You understand? That's purposeful. That's why they're gonna start making cars look even more stupid and more ridiculous or more ugly, because they want to try to turn people off from buying cars. So because they want to keep people stationary, because they want to keep people locked in the time frame as it's slipping away. They know it's slipping away. They know it's over, but they can't make it happen. You understand? It's pretty much over. So that's why all of this stuff is coming out. So same thing, like when they say Byzantine, right? You heard the term Byzantine before, right? The Byzantines that's not even their real name. That's not even what they're called academically. Academically, they're called Pelasgians, right? Pelasgians. Okay? These are Pelasgians. These Pelasgians are descendants of the old Etruscans, you know what I mean? And old Macedonians, right? Lacedaemonians, if that's how you pronounce it. Excuse my butchering of the word, but it's another one of them. So these are the so-called ancient Arabians now. So what I'm gonna show you now is the ancient Arabians and the ancient Greeks. Okay, on the left-hand side is the ancient so-called Greeks, who again are Macedonians, Minoans, Cretans, Pompons, Trojans, Spartan, all them type of people, right? All them people is old pagan Hebrews, right? Who are living like Gentiles, meaning people that's not following any spiritual laws. They more secular, right? Then on your right is a Pelasgian, an ancient Arabian, right? As you can see, they have similar clothing because, again, they're similar people. Like if you look at a rapper from Britain right now and a rapper from Brooklyn right now, they probably be dressed the same. You know what I'm saying? Until they open their mouth, you don't know, you know what I mean, what they are. But we don't see these images of these places because then that would mean that we would pay more attention to what they're doing to those places. See what I'm saying? So they've lulled everybody to sleep to the idea that anybody melanated is basically, again, from Africa. So when you see images of this, I'm showing you, like, again, people from the Byzantine Empire, right? And I'm showing you, no, these people was melanated too. Down, what we're saying is that everywhere on Earth that you're going, you keep seeing the same type of situation. And it was like at one point, it seemed like everybody was like this. And then some happened, and then everybody was different. Right? And then everybody was beefing with everybody, and it was problems, you know, which is sad because most of these problems are coming from the fact that we've been taught that we are aliens to where we are, when really it's just that this time period that we're in is relegated to using fictional events to tell history. See, which then opens it up for them to turn it into fiction or things that they can use, colorable things that they can use to then again put us in that position. So these people we're seeing, these ancient Arabians or whatever, or ancient Pelasgians, they were basically, they were Christians, right? But they were Christians of the east, of the Western Orthodox, right? Which is why they're so tied. That's why I'm showing you them with the Greek, because they're both basically like tied together. You know what I'm saying? They have like the link, because all of these guys, if we're going by the biblical term, are basically what they call Danites. See what I'm saying? And then all these Danites are pagan, again, so-called pagan Hebrews who use their seafaring powers to help establish technology and trade routes with other nations to then take more control over their kin, who were or are the so-called 12 tribes, what they call Israelites or whatever, right? So when you see images like this of the Moor being baptized by the the um the proxy, what you're saying is him being, as a noble, being brought into a different form now of Romanism, right? This is how Moors became Spanish. See what I'm saying? By converting through the auspices of one of the lower powers to then show piety to the new god, right? Which was being funded by these same Venetian and French oligarchs, right? Who then led to paying for campaigns like the Crusades and all of that, which were just pseudo modern campaigns of the original campaign, right? Which was them destroying and taking over these different places. So, fallen angels, I mean, there's a book you can get called The Dictionary of Angels. I've mentioned it before, and it's very good. It has the entire breakdown of angels, etc. You know what I mean, in depth, with the language text, the Latin equivalents. Like, he really went in. I remember reading it as a much younger person, like really being like, dang, and then seeing how it how the numbers associated with these things, continue to manifest and stuff up until this day. You know, it's very interesting. But yeah, so that's what Doge is doing. That's why Doge is such a problem, because it's essentially assessing and reassessing the distribution of our estate's money. By ours, meaning all of the original Americans who can at least trace their families back at least 3 to 4 generations. And what's great is because of what happened to us, we are automatically kind of grandfathered in because of the fact that everybody's quick to throw in our face that we don't have no culture. We don't have no this. We was all slaves from that. Okay, cool. That then means, you see what I'm saying? That whatever we decide for ourselves as culture or as real whatever is it, right? Right? So that also means that whatever you telling me it is definitely can't be it. Because out of your own mouth, you saying that I don't have it. So I'm from Africa, but I'm not African. Um, I've created hip hop culture, but hip hop's not a culture. I'm, 95% of original so-called black men marry other so-called black women, but all black men do is marry black women. Okay, okay. So what you're doing is then boom, but then it goes the other way for that. Because remember, they're trying to make the original woman as the new face of fake progress, right? But there's a whole contingent of original women that don't agree with any of that crap. And now that they're making their voices heard, what they're doing is reversing the conversion. What we're witnessing is a mass uh, breaking down or rejection of mass brainwashing that has been happening for the last 8 years specifically. The last 8 years specifically, you've been the target of a massive brainwash campaign. So the fact that this dude was able to get in, right, as the opposing force, right? Now he's using the brainwashing too. He's using the same tactic essentially that they're using. He's brainwashing people too, but he's brainwashing people to want to have things for themselves and see their country, right, be a certain way. So that alone is different. Like in 2024, if you wanted to be a rebel as a child, become a Christian. You know what I'm saying? Like that's the most counterculture thing you can do because all they do is beat up Christians all day, right? But then when they say, okay, well, we need to be Christianity is what imposed all of this stuff on us. It's like, yeah, but that had nothing to do, like the type of Christianity that we dealing with now had nothing to do with what these Moors was dealing with, who happened to be that during the golden eras. It's totally different. Totally different, right? So we keep trying to judge what these niggas done to us as if it's the same as what has happened to anybody else in the world, and it's totally different. Nobody, no other race of man puts up with what black men do, and with black women so called, and what so called black women do with black men. No other race put their shit out there like that, but them. You understand? Like they've created such a market, right? And who's created this? Zeus. You understand? There's a network called Zeus. I'm telling you, with this Greek shit, Zeus is one of the biggest things promoting this, and people dying from this thing. Where they openly, where you have members of the cast openly making pleas for help, GoFundMe's to help him hide from the people from the network trying to kill him or sacrifice him. We've made it mainstream. We've made human sacrifice mainstream by not even like really taking it serious. Like, but all we're seeing is evidence of this is what they doing, and we're still like, yeah, but can't save everybody. And this is what I'm saying. This is why they're able to get away with it. Again, all of that is came to us as Moorish people once we were put in the context of having to accept their version of Christianity. Whereas a huge contingent of us denied that and went with the Western version of that and wound up with the Greek Orthodox. That's how you got Ethiopians. That's how you got the Greek Orthodox being one of the biggest churches in Ethiopia. That's why all of the stuff that they was reading in their liturgy and all that is coming from Greek, which can be traced all the way back to Alexander the Great, which then can be traced all the way back to so-called Carthaginian rule, because Philip was Macedonia was a vassal state of Carthage before it fell to Rome. Right? So all of these places, all of these things they doing is basically the same people is ultimately what's going on with it. Yeah, I believe it is Gustav Davidson. I'm gonna try to put it up before we close out. Yeah, so these two dudes, these are Pelagians, aka Byzantine people. These are the people that was there, when the basilica was built or after. You see it behind him in the pictures, all Moors. So how is it you got all of these Moors around, and then there's this one white man? Like, y'all don't find that funny? There's no other white people around. Who's this white man? Where did they get this bum from to do that? This was the ritual, though. This was the humiliation ritual that these Moors was doing to show that they was going to pledge fealty to the hidden hand, which was the black nobility that was using these things to be able to come up and claim land and use their name to claim land. This is it. You look at it in the calendar, as we showed before. Use this one, right? So again, this was them reestablishing their calendar, or Gregorian calendar, as you say, but it was done in a means again to alter again the temporal frame of how we would assimilate information. So if we was to go back in the computer and look back on how they did it, it would be, you know, boom, and then the next thing you know, you go from the fourth day to the 15th day. You know, so according to them, they're saying effective immediately in the year 1582, the last day of the Julian calendar was Thursday, October 4th, and the first day of the Gregorian calendar was now Friday, October 14th. Which then again, through this act, and everybody that accepted that, and then accepted the Easter going back to the time frame that they had set for it, which originally was under Ishtar, the time of Ishtar being born. You see, they can now line it all up. So now they got the Father, they got the Son, they got the Holy Ghost, and then they're able to now link this up now in the context to now birth something new, which is now their version of Christianity. However, many Christians, like I said, went to war with them about doing that. That's part of why the Moors was able to help initiate the so-called kingdom and all of that to begin with. Because like I said, only 5% of them was Islamic. But all of the Christians was backing them. So, right, that means that they were comfortable with or under Moorish rule to the point that they basically got rid of other ways to be able to live and do the science and worship what they wanted in harmony with everybody else. What do you see? So once Charles takes over, gets the land, right? They then start flipping it and then split it into two. It's Carolina, and then they split it into north and south because it's the north and the south jurisdictions of the people more than what we think as the geographic locations, right? But there were nations that was already here that wasn't a part of the greater empire like that, that was still independent and had their own thing popping. And they was in league because we was cousins or whatever, but they wasn't necessarily like down with everything that everybody else was getting down with. Because like I said, most of these people would looked at it like these were just different versions of, relatives that now were coming back into our lives. You know what I mean? From old times now coming back. And they brought with them these people. Or these things showed up, right? And then shipped all of the money back to the ruling and the royal families. Either way, at one time it was not unified, you know, it was split. And because Europe had been broken up again through the family lines of everything that was happening to them, they decided to flee or set up corporations to be able to flee to or get money popping so that way they could always maintain. So the two main houses that always had beef but always intermarried with each other, you don't hear a lot of Moors talk about, were the Ibeline, right? The Ibelines and the Guelphs, or the Guelph, just like the Hatfields and the McCoys, and there's always two. So after this time frame, it's illegal to speak that this actually happened. You understand? So it naturally becomes a secret because remember, the majority of the population is just waking up to the understanding that they're a part of something or that something had happened that is now kind of fading away, right? Because the more they're anchored into the physical hardships of what's happening to them in the time frame that they're in, the more they're forgetting about how glorious and shit used to be because they got to survive. So they're not thinking about all that. Think about all the gypsies when you used to see TV shows about gypsies, right? Back in the days, what you remember. It was a bunch of happy, dark skinned people, mustaches and shit, and like little fezzes, right? And they was in the woods with with wagons full of gold and shit. Like where they get all that gold from? Why they homeless? Because they represent what they call the vanquished dukes. That what's his name talks about the vanquished dukes of America. That what's the book? Ancient Modern Britons. He discusses that. He refers to them or people like that. So these are the ancient ones that was there. Like when they talk about the leprechauns and all of that, there was a huge war that they talk about that persisted for thousands of years, right? Well, I'll get to that in a minute. So this is George, right? There's that I again, right? Right? See the I or J. The Prince of Wales feathers are the heraldic badge of the Prince of Wales, the heir to the British throne. The badge consists of three white ostrich feathers encircled in a gold coronet, right? Ribbon below. The coronet bears the German motto, Ich Dien, or Dien, which is I serve, as well as being used in royal heraldry. The feathers are sometimes used to symbolize Wales itself, particularly in Welsh rugby union. because the Welsh were Moors. The Royal Guelphic Order, see, is a Hanoverian order. So these are the German Moors, right? Connected to or through the Holy Roman Empire, with dominion here in the so-called Antilles that they call the Caribbean and parts of America, right? This is the headdress that the kings wear, right? This is what the kings wear. So this shows that he is a Prince of Wales, and that Wales as an order was connected to the Guelph. Like I said, the Guelph were one of those ancient families that allegedly were always here, right? Or that came from the lands beyond and brought with them, the understanding on how to work metals and all of that. So basically, just another story about the Anunnaki or one of these ancient races you want to say or talk about. So the headdresses, like I said, the ostrich feathers, you know what I'm saying, always represent the heraldry and the royalty of the people themselves, right? Because the feather represented Ma'at. And Ma'at, or the feather, is also used at the time of the weighing of the soul. So the feather itself, as a symbol to our ancient forefathers, was very, very significant and very powerful, right? That's why when you look at old pictures of old Arabia and stuff like that with those Moors and those places, you don't see them. You don't see those Arabians with the feathers and all of that. You see them with the feathers and the jewels, with the turbans and the crowns and all of that when they're Moorish. And they're showing you the Moorish influence of those peoples in those times. So whenever you see the feather and the diadem together, that's like a connection showing you like they're connected to the old Moorish way of representing. Because the diadem represents the pineal, the feather represents the flight. You know what I mean? The turban represents like the cloud. The fez itself represents the house that protects the central nervous system, which is the hair. You know what I mean? So everything have a representation in our culture, right? But because it took 600 years to get these people civilized enough to be able to understand, how to channel the warlike energy into tactics, this is why they had to be ruled over in secret. You understand? And this became the hidden hand. And these so-called Caucasian people today that you call Turks, that you see in fezzes and you think that you know, they are part of like our empire. When they were like Mamelukes, Janissaries, they were used as, they were old prisoners of war who were used to keep the nobility from having to lose their lives on the front line, because they were promised and given freedom out of the clutches of Europe, you see, if they were to come over here and fight, see, and take control of land on behalf of whatever Moorish warlord, i.e., state, was now um, paying them. You understand? And so they were given limited jurisdiction to hold these lands in trust, right? In which their ruler would be the one to do that. That's how you had white people who were Muslims running Egypt, the Mamelukes. That's how you had the white people, the white Greeks out of Europa, right? The Khazarians and stuff ruling Turkey. Remember, they didn't adopt the fez until Turkey as a national headdress until like the 1800s. And they imported all of them fezzes from old Morocco. Then by the end of the 1900s, they put themselves under restriction under a Greek named the Ada Khan, placed him in power to then take Turkey from being a real so-called Muslim state into a secular state, and then banned the Fez as a means of doing that, which then made the kingdom, excuse me, the territory of French Morocco the only place where the Fez was staying. You see what I'm saying? So all of these old Europeans, like I said, know about the Moors and the Moorish history of their forefathers because they are living off the inheritance of as the descendants of the proxy families that have used these people's names to do that. Rockefeller ain't their real name. That's just the name that they using or are allowed to use. You see, like I said, there's been factions at war during this 1,000 years. There's a story of I think is it Socrates? See, the Socrates or Plato, but he talks about a war between the Twas, what he called the pygmies, but we call it Twas in old Europa, where they were fighting the storks. It's supposedly real. Where they had been at war with storks for thousands of years. There's a picture. And that these Twas, um, there's another story with another so-called Native American, what they'll call Indian group. I think it's a Hopi story. It's the Hopi or Lakota, where they talk about another group of people who were little, who lived on the coasts, and then people used to see them fighting the storks and shit, and they would really be at war with them. And they taught them how to use sticks. People suggested they use these types of sticks and shit, and then from there they basically been doing that. So how does this translate to us in real life? Well, some of us that's old enough remember we grew up at a time when they had a cartoon called like The Littles and Manchi Chi and stuff like that. Because the Smurfs, right? All that type of small stuff. Just a couple of years ago, they was obsessed with downsizing. They had a movie called Downsizing with what's his name? Remember Ant-Man? A couple of years ago, they was really into that because they was trying to get you into the mind state of downsizing, of not having a lot. You understand? Of putting you in a circumstance where you're not, where you get used to having less, right? Which is what happened to, they say, the story of the pygmies and these people with the stork water. They wind up losing. And then from there, a little after that, that's when what's his name? St. Patrick came in the aisle and they shut them all down and chased them out. So, like I said, man, all of this stuff come from somewhere. All these niggas is down with it, right? But like I was saying with the ostrich feathers, that's what made the Moors synonymous. Like, where was Moors in America getting ostrich feathers from? And why? So when the white people say, well, this coin is not proof that George was black, just because he's wearing a crown. No, he's wearing a native crown of the American Empire. Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, very good, Brandon. You're right. Of the old American Moorish Empire, right? Which is also again the symbol of the symbolic aspect of the Prince of Wales. So what are you talking about? And what he's wearing on his head, that's what all of us was wearing here. We was all wearing shit like that. We was all wearing feathers like this. You see how this is what the fez used to do. See how the fez is protecting, when I said it's protecting the central nervous system, how it's protecting the hair, but it fits evenly. And wherever you go in the world, the oldest people, they're always wearing these feathers, right? With Rolexes on and handbags and wings. Like, what's up with that? White folk wasn't wearing feathers like that. They said, oh, the pictures, they would paint themselves blue. Yeah. Just the same way the warriors in what you call it was doing. The Mohicans who were Moors, the Mohawks who were Moors, they was paying themselves blue too. So what? They Celtic? No, no, they're just a part of, again, a family tree that we only understand through stories. And then genetically, we try to take remnants, shit that's left here in the void, and then put it together in a manner that makes sense. So if Buddha had locks, right? You know what I mean? If King George was wearing ostrich feathers, and we was wearing the ostrich feathers over here, that means we was a part again of the war, the Guelph and the Ibeline. This war culminated in what they call the Crusades, when Hugh de Payon, a Moor who was a Guelph, decided that he was going to take the stuff, he was going to take the land back. He's also French, which means technically he was Haitian, and take the land back, and they would do that. Only difference is that Jerusalem we talking about is in Peru, right? We're not talking about the staged Jerusalem stuff that they created later. So I'll get to that in a minute. This is, again, here go the feathers or the lotus. Hey, all together. So like I said, the Doge is established to create a place to discuss the missing time. The time based on the money that's used, that was used to create the department. All of that money that was being taken and funneled out, one of the people who receive or receives that were, again, these so-called royal families who were on the outs with the other royal families. That's what the black budgets and this type of stuff was about, was set up for. Because this war has been going on since, like I said, the fall of Granada, in which a society was established called the Alumbrados. And the Alumbrados society was created by Moors who were now conversos, people like Alessandro Medici and these types of people who, although were a part of the problem, were trying to create a solution by extending global markets to be able to funnel a war against Papal Rome, in which Papal Rome would be circumvented, in which then they could take control and put the descendants of these people back on top. That's what people like Hayam Solomon come from, a Caucasian man a Moorish man that I had mentioned back in the days, who himself, whose family could trace their lineage back to the fall of Granada and wound up in Charleston, South Carolina, and became a part of the old Confederation of that time and funded that Confederation with some of the ancient gold that was pledged to the Confederacy by these descendants of Moors in modern day. So these Mamelukes, like I said, have been around for a while playing the role because that was what their ancestors have always done. It has nothing to do with us trying to rewrite history. Well, we don't got to do that. The Moorish influence of society has always been what it is. But there's always been actors, you see, who have created circumstances where Moors are made to look like savages, which is a part of the plan. You understand? Because if people find out that it's an active nationality or an active way of life, for better word, it now becomes not a circumstantial thing, but something that I can be today. I don't have to try to trace a lineage back to a place that I may not actually have lineage from. I can be who I am here now, because there was always a people here now who look like that, who again are and were Moors. Okay? 1 second. Remember I was saying how Elijah Muhammad looked like the Sauk people or Black Hawk? This is what I mean. See what I mean? Black Hawk is like I said, he's a god, and turned him into a god in Louisiana. You know, but people don't understand how they've been working. Like I said, everybody's nationality against one another. When really it's just we've always kind of been everywhere. So they want you to believe that you have to be Indian to be. You have to be. What did it say? You got to be like the type of Indian that they are, that they see that these white people are. When those people were taught that by people who were put in those positions and made it up. They don't want to accept that, and that's the problem. Like a lot of the stuff they doing, a lot of the dances and shit they doing, we was already doing. Like the Watusi and these types of dances, those are the same dances these people was emulating at these powwows and stuff. Look at it. Go back and look at it. You'll see. White folk just made up a lot of that shit and then just passed it down. And then to stay darker or to create more of a mystique about themselves, they made sure that for a certain time they intermarried with more, darker skinned Mexican type people. That's where the Chicano and that type of thing from. And then they kept that whole skin color Nazi thing going.
Love you guys.
Love you too, fam. It's a good boy. And he created a new subculture. That's where the Chicanos and all of that shit came from. The whole La Raza, the race. That's all some racist shit. That's all some Mexican Nazi shit, really. You know what I mean? Like keep it real, like, you know what I mean? And because they raised them like that. Can't be mad at them. They raised them like that. You know what I mean? However, like I said, with rap and all of the stuff that we're going through now, and you got a whole contingent of Mexican people claiming their actual nationality, it's crazy. You know what I mean? It's really crazy when you really think about it. Anybody have any questions? I'll pull the last thing out. I had somebody write and they say, "Oh well, how did you saying that Selassie, Selassie was killed? They buried him under a toilet. You know what I mean? That's how much disrespect they have for him at the end, which is horrible." But it's like, well, you can't prove that he was the king of Italy and all that. Yes, you can, because it says that the king of Italy is also the emperor of Ethiopia and also the king of the Albanians. So, if Ethiopia was never conquered by Italy or Albania, then how is some white man the emperor or was the emperor of Italy? Can somebody explain that? How is he the emperor over Italy when Italy itself, like I said, was not only fascist but and not only Roman, you know what I mean? But like what are they talking about? So that's what I mean, guys. Like all of this stuff that we're dealing with these orders and stuff, a lot of this is old beef. So even Crip and Blood, even GDVD or BD or whatever, all of that is Ibeline Gulif. You understand? It's the same. It's the same thing. Big up to my Moors that sent me this on the left hand side. So I think there's this Caucasian lady named, what's her name? Michelle Gibson, something like that. She's pretty good. I don't know if this is her or she put this out, but one of my Moors uh, come to class sent me this. So on your right, allegedly is Edward III. I had another book that said this was actually Charlemagne. That is, if Charlemagne as an individual existed, but whatever. Anyway, so this is why Black Hawk and Elijah Muhammad and his people or whatever, this is why they were such a thing. You know what I mean? Because they held sway. Look up the Black Hawk War. Very significant in the struggle of nationality, American nationality or Moorish American nationality. Right? So this is before the United States even exists. You know what I mean? This is before all of this. This is when the warlords are still using the territory. On your right, like I said, they said this is Edward II, but I also had another book that said that this was Charlemagne. Whoever it is, it's a Moor, you can see with the fuzzy beard and all of that, woolly hair, and he's wearing the cross of St. George. Okay? And you see he's still got the heraldry of the dynasties, which is the same color as the red, white, and blue. You see what I'm saying? Which is why the flag, see, the star and the lion go together. When the last time you seen a lion in London? Lions ain't indigenous to London. So why is a lion on the flag of the British Crown? Why they always using that? Because they're trying to show that they're part of the Lion Kingdom of Judah, which again was an old Moorish kingdom, according to Micah. When you read the book of Micah and how he ministered to the Moorishites. So all of these kingdoms, again, are just descendant of these ancient kingdoms, these ancient peoples who got into these ancient wars with each other, who then at one point or another started dealing with the gene therapy, the gene experiments, started raising other beings up to help them subdue the other ones. And then whenever there was a universal upheaval, tried to position themselves in the right position to be able to capitalize on it by being the next priesthood, the next society, the next whoever that's now going to administer to the new people, right? However they are, right? Or, like I said, this is at the end of the old Moorish Empire. Everybody basically done been blind, crippled, or crazy. And now we're all put into this new system in which now we are to be the backbone. Because remember, we got to be the butlers. We got to be all of that. Why? Because we the only ones that know how everything works. These niggas don't know how none of this stuff work. They don't know how none of this stuff work. They just got here. They just came out the ground. They just, however it was that they was manifested, is what it is. And like I said, these Moors started to accept these Caucasian women and these Caucasian things as payment for services rendered. So eventually they start having these types of children with them. And then these children, again, because some of them get thrown into slavery by these Moors because they favoring their original children over them, right? So they got to do astronomical stuff to prove that they even worth the effort. This makes them resent the father. Next thing you know, they at war. They siding with the mother side. They make sure they get them a slave woman, and now his line is totally white from that point on. And then they hide the dark skinned aspects of the family, get all the portraits repainted, right? It's mad simple. It's mad simple. There's a movie called Saltburn, and it's just about this. Go watch this movie. But if you're not totally offended, just spiritually, by what you see in that movie, you'll see what I'm talking about. That just show you how far niggas will take it to get what you got. Yeah, so get this book, Making It a White Man. Yeah, the Duke of Lancaster, who was the son of Edward III, right, and Philippa the Einhalt, right, German, father of Henry the Eighth of England, husband of Lancaster. So again, Moors. These is all Moors. They gave birth to niggas like this, right? The slave class, and then the slave class got sent off to being janissaries and whatever else, janissaries, Mamelukes, right? Castrados, right? Putting them all around the empire, putting them, sitting them over, keeping the temples away from other relatives and stuff. And then meanwhile, they running all of this through Rome, but the Rome's splitting up. So the western portion, it goes its own way, stays Greek. That's why all of their services to this day is in Greek. Western services go with the Vulgate Latin, which is the kind of the pig Latin of Latin. You know what I mean? And they get everybody wrapped up in the Constantine agreed upon version of Christianity. To where you got people who say you're not supposed to worship idols with the Bible and all of that, but yet still they'll go and they'll, have graven idols of whoever, Mary, Joseph, Saint, this one, Saint, this is what they do. What are you gonna do? So they had to find a way out. And one of the ways out was through entertainment. This is where the vaudevillian stuff came from. This is where the freak shows, the side shows, the carnies, right? This is where everybody who was born with these defects and stuff, right? Who were automatically cut off, who couldn't be in the army, who couldn't fight for their land, who couldn't be on some land lottery shit. A lot of them had babies. Them babies became vandals. What do you call that? Outlaws. Started going robbing all the Moorish Republic banks that was all in the Midwest and all in places, right? This is what happened. This make more sense than them telling me that one year niggas was the slaves and then by the next year they all was running Congress. That don't make sense to me. You gotta explain that to me. How that happened. How these niggas was sharecropping one day and next day they understand the intricacies of jurisprudence. That's new. You know what I mean? But again, these were the new ones that was left. These were the ones who were descended from different groups like the Jacobins and the Huguenots, who were all Moors in the 15, 16, 1700s, who still in power. After the 1700s, what happened? Napoleon, everything started getting crazy. That was the last flip up. And all them niggas got deposed. So in order for them to stay, they had to integrate into the new reset society that they was trying to impose on everybody. Set up shit for the Cabbage Patch Kids, set up, teach the infrastructure to the new puppets who were the new people who they were using to re-people our people. Look, it says white slavery of Turkey, Egypt, and America. So if you say, well, there was white slaves in America, yeah. Gold, Forgotten Cause of the Civil War. Perfect example. Great book. This is now almost $5,000. It's crazy. When I first mentioned it, it was like $40 back in 2001, maybe. Yeah. Right. So that's why all of these dudes is Freemasons. They all had to convert. This was the conversion. This was the humiliation ritual. And then they created schools. See, right here, he teaching him about the globe. See, they teaching them about the globe. Who's that? Frederick Douglass, right? Go back and look at the Salisbury Steak video I did. Told you all about that nigga. All about that whole situation with him and the rest of the actors. You know what I'm saying? Where is this thing I had on him? You know, all come back to roost because the Moors, again, we're a global people. But just because we were global people and we were melanated didn't mean that we all got together. You know what I'm saying? We wasn't always down with each other because some of us was dealing with the pagan interfaces and trying to use images and ways to bring them back in to the fold, bring that energy back in so they could get more money, so they could learn more technology, and then take the technology we already had that they still trying to figure out how to use, and then reshape it. The god or the demon that's attached to the Grammys is called gramophone. And gramophone is a unicorn. That's why unicorns are very important to these people in their little stories, because unicorns, they believe, are actually real. Now, in the practical sense, unicorns, in spoken of by the ancient people, are they was really talking about rhinoceri. You know what I'm saying? But they refer to it because the first part of it is, I think, rhinoceros unicornius, right? In Latin, for instance. But essentially they believe, that's one way of saying it. But then that's you. How does that explain people referring to as unicorns who didn't ever seen a hippopotamus? You know what I mean? So whatever, but it make you think. But this is what the demon looked like. That's why they always give out the awards with the little gramophone. That's why they called that thing a gramophone. Understand? Because this is how he would do it. Right? Now some people say he's another version of Gabriel, right? The angel. Because Gabriel has the horn. But that is for you to say. But that is to say that gramophone, or the horn, as it is, the war horn, was actually a very powerful weapon that the people would use, or people was using in times of war. It was very significant in how they was defending themselves, because, like I said, music, I think, is why they used the whole thing against us like that, or understood that by using music they could continuously keep us in a trance of not knowing, by constantly getting us to recite the spells of not remembering. You know what I'm saying? We're doing it because we keep singing the same song, like Digital Underground said. We contribute to our own destruction in that way. You know what I mean? Anybody have any questions? Yeah, that's why these puppets, they gotta redistribute them to try to get us back liking them again, because their time is useless, and when that doesn't happen, they just use the part that they can't take advantage of. On the other side is a map that's been going around the internet again, showing and proving all of that. So one of the old myths was that after Zeus or whoever killed Gramophone, he was blown up, and then the pieces of him again was scattered around, which is very similar to the story of Osiris, which is what they're always doing, what they're always emulating with humiliation rituals, you know, because essentially what they're trying to do is give birth to this aeon in which these things perpetually happen enough where they can solidify, which then gives them a groundhold, a foothold in reality. But it's not working. It's all crashing around. You know what I mean? And now we're at the stage where this phase of the controllers is being revealed. There's nothing they can really do about it. You know. So, anybody have any other questions? About the Moorish version of the Manhattan Project. It talks about in Uriel's book. Yeah, he's talking about the Moorish. What did he call it? The Moorish. Apex something product. I forget it, but I do know what you're talking about. Yeah, that allegedly is in play. I mean, for all we know, we're fulfilling that. You know what I mean? We're probably fulfilling that right now. You know what I'm saying? It's just that they want us to believe that the people who are there now are the ancient people there, or were the ancient people there. And they're like, oh, well, they're still speaking that ancient language. Really? Well, if they are, then how come they're phenotypically not of the same people who were speaking it from the beginning? Because they're a different people. So if you lived in a place for a long time and you were speaking the original Russian, let's say, Pushkin type Russian, right? And then the next generation of white people that are born under you, the serfs that are raised up under you, now they're speaking the same Russian. It's still Russian, right? It's still the same. But what makes it different is now the inflections might be different, you know, all of that type of stuff. And because that's different, that creates a different mannerism, and eventually it becomes more of the people who are now used to speaking it. But that don't mean that the original peoples that were speaking it are somehow like what, not thing. They're the root of where it came from. And that's all I'm saying. Let's stop dissing the root and giving all of the praise to the tree. You wouldn't see the tree if it wasn't for the root. And if those people can exist in those places now, knowing that they weren't the origines of that now, of course they want us to believe then there was something else. Of course they would. It just benefits them. You know what I'm saying? It benefits them. So yeah, these Mamelukes, they're just doing what they're supposed to do. Only difference now is that this one is about trying to reestablish the Republican form of government by using the Constitution, which then activates the old treaties, which then puts in the old Barbary provisions into effect. And by using tariffs, by using the other Moorish thing, he's employing, is creating the place for these things to exist, which then do what? Create more opportunities, like I said, for us to do what we need to do without anybody's help. Because now there's nobody sucking up all the resources that's blocking us from doing it. What's wrong with that? Niggas finally got what you wanted. You wanted to know who was stealing. You wanted to know who was doing all that. And again, that's just what the Doge and them used to do. Used to come before the Doge. He used to get the auditor, and they used to say, whatever it is that you did, this is how much you owe. Do you have it? Can you pay it? You not? Well, you either go to the debtor prison, right? Or you do whatever job, or you become this person's slave, or whatever it is you do. That's what he doing right now. That's old Moorish law. That's old Moorish custom, right? That's what y'all say y'all want. Y'all say y'all want him to punish the white people. So that's what he doing. You dig? Like, that's all what I'm saying is that's what he said he doing. So let him do that. Stop trying to get in the way and trying to get in the thing that's hustle. Because maybe you might get your oil fields and shit back out of this. You don't know. You understand that this nigga had the Ark of the Covenant at his house. What they saying is the Ark of the Covenant at his house. You understand what I'm telling you? You understand? Then they just took it to Jerusalem. This is it. He had the life-size replica of the Ark of his Covenant. All the time he was going through the court shit, all of that stuff. This is the ritual they were setting up. This is what he already had out there. Right? They just shipped this to Jerusalem. It's not looking good for these people. Well, is that the real outcome? It don't matter whether I believe it's real or not. It don't matter. The fact is the nigga got it. He got it, bro. They believe it's real. And they're the ones with their hands on the nuclear buttons, right? So if he making them believe something's real that's not real to your benefit, how does that hurt you? That's the question. Everything that's supposed to be happening is supposed to be benefiting the original veterans of the war. Who's been at war longer than the Moors? Nobody been at war longer than us. We've been at war so long, niggas forgot. Niggas forgot we even existed. You understand? We've been at war so long, niggas is telling us that we not even who we are. And I'm saying Moors. You got Moors telling other Moors what type of Moors they could be. That's how crazy shit is now. So that's why it's like you gotta just take it with stride, man, and not get caught up in all of the bravado shit these niggas will have you doing. Cause they'll get you caught up, bro. They'll get you caught up in shit that's not even real. Or because they need it to be real in order to justify their own indecisiveness, loneliness. All the proof is already there. It's already there. There's nothing for us to dispute anymore. At this point, we just splitting hairs. But again, let niggas be mad. Let niggas hate Moors, whatever they're gonna do. Lastly, before we go out, this is from the book One World Tartaria. Rest in peace, James W. Lee. I just heard that he had died. I didn't even know. Tartars, the oldest in Asia genus, and the many people, 1,000 years, Chinese and Emerald, blah blah blah. Old Tart. See, there was difference between Old Tartary, right? Grand Tartary. Then there was Independent Tartary, right? There were different sections. We were part of Independent Tartary, if that's a way, and that consisted of places like Cathay and some of the places spoken about by Marco Polo. So you could go back and read this. You could pause and read this if you don't get the book. But the unification of all of these ancient lands came through a group of ancient peoples again, called the by the time of the Russo, the Russian Romans took over, they were called the Pugachev. They were the last of the new Muscovites that was basically done. That's back when it was connected here to America. Okay. Anybody else have any other questions? This is an old septentrional map. Any septentrional or septentrional map like this is always talking about America. So this port right here, this section over right here, this is all America they talk about. This right here is South America, which again, as you can see, is already ruled by Moors, by the crests. Right? See, Moragoon. See the Moor right here with the red cape and the turban and the scepter. You know, sea creatures. So yeah, we was doing it big. You know, a lot of people still living off of us. So now we're supposed to be getting all of that back. So again, like I said last week, big up to the Moorish Progressive Alliance of Chicago for doing their work to create the whole thing, racial classification thing. Some people think, Moors gonna find a problem with it. But I think it can be used again as another example, another tool, show and prove. It also reinforced the monthly, once a year commemoration, Moorish American Week, a month or whatever. So those things are great because again, it keeps the understanding alive of us, and we can use those things to again observe and have pride and move forward, man. Regardless to what type of Moor you're striving to be, so long as you practice in love, truth, peace, freedom, justice, and equality, and you don't have to be a part of the Moorish Science Temple of America, Divine and National Movement to practice those things. And if you think you do, there's something wrong with you. Okay? You should be doing that anyway. So, yeah, as we close out, what does it say? Frederick Douglass paper, right? The colonization scheme. There is no sentiment more universally entertained, no more firmly held by the free colored people of the United States than that is of their own native land. See? And that here, for good or evil, their destiny is to be wrought out. Identify with the entire history of the American people going back more than 200 years. This sentiment is natural and praiseworthy. There is not now, there's never been, and we think therefore never will be any general desire on the part of our people to immigrate from this land to any other, and at least to the wilds of Africa. Okay? Right, again, I just wanted to show you here. This is an I. This is not a 1. So this is 761. This is Ben Bey Muali's Ben Bey Emmanuel Muali, aka Benjamin Banneker's almanac, Poor Richard's almanac. See, this is 761. This is 773. This is something else. So it's probably maybe the year of Iusis or whatever, but I believe the whole thing switched over in 1776. That's why it's so important. That's when they probably let the devil out the pit. That's when Washington and them niggas set up the whole situation or whatever. Because remember, Washington and these Jefferson and these niggas, these is old Huguenot niggas that went over to France, made deals with whatever entities the black nobility niggas was doing. And then they figured that they was going to create their own form of magic and their own form of masonry to keep them, you know what I mean, in control and eventually break the British yoke. And that's what eventually led to the war between the North and the South Freemasonic jurisdictions. All of those years later, because that's why the land that they chose to build Washington D.C. on again was a swamp, which means it was a city or whatever that got reset or destroyed under that, and it was called Rome. Again, owned by a Jesuit named Francis Pope. And now we live under a time where the Pope that's dying is called Pope Francis. So they playing games. You know what I mean? And they playing games. Anybody have any other questions? So yeah, the Doge thing is going to keep getting worse. They're going to keep trimming down to this almost the only factions that work a part of the government are the things that keep it running basically or barely. Right? Also, another reason why they're also trying to downsize, keep it real, is there's over 56 million. There's millions of so-called black males that live in this country that have been trained by the military. You understand? Who, like, let's say the white people, the white nationalists that y'all be beefing about so much that y'all so scared of. If it really popped off like that, you don't understand how many original men and women have been trained by this army. You don't even get it. It's not gonna go how you think it's gonna go. Them white people not going. It's not gonna be a cakewalk in the morning like they think. So they need to. So what he's trying to also do is like change up that demographic. I think he's trying to make it more equal. But remember, Freemasonry, gangs, and shit. That shit is big in the army right now. It's big in the army. They was trying to bring the trans shit in there to try to tone it down a little, but now that's dead. So it's about to get extra turned up masculine. So they got to figure out how they're gonna deal with that. Okay. Anybody else? Yeah, he dying. That's because of all of the rituals, crazy shit he been doing. It's a good for him. Brother said, can you speak briefly on the Freemasons and the gangs? The the process starts from the school. From the time that the school knows that the child, and this was part of the Jesuit breaking. This is also part of communist breaking and stuff. They find the child and they isolate them. They used to have a program. They have programs where they isolate and figure out what children they're going to use for things like that. But anyway, they find a child that they say is troubled, especially if he don't got no father in the house. And then what they do is they target that child. They encourage that child to get bullied and messed with and whatever. And then after a while, they're able to use that circumstance to be able to isolate the child and push the child into the judicial system. And then once the child has more than 3 instances with law enforcement or authority or whatever, they start to open a record on the child in case they ever want to now do things with the child, experiment on the child, because now they've labeled the child as a consistent problem, like he has a learning disability problem. So he's potentially more likely to commit crime because he feels misunderstood and nobody's helping him, and they notice because they're doing it. And then from that point on, they put the child in circumstances he may not even realize it. The police may say, "Hey, go in there and punch that kid," because they know that they're gonna set him off, and he gonna wind up almost killing the kid. And then now he go to juvie. Now he in juvie. Now he in county. Now he in county. He going to the pen. Now from the pen, you see. And rap has been played through all of this. So the OGs, they get lesser time when they decide what areas eventually, with the state planners and the Corps of Civil Engineers or whoever they got on file, to decide what areas they're going to regentrify, or what areas is eventually going to start rising out of the ground, what buildings need to get redone because niggas, the access ways is about to open and shit in them, so they got to re-brick them up. These are real things. Goes into city planning and shit like that. And so they bring these people in to handle it. So the OGs, they'll get less time taken off their thing if they, orchestrate and urge these young brothers to do crime. Same way the rappers get money. You see what I'm saying? Endorsements, things like that. Same way the basketball players get it for promoting liquor and sexual promiscuity, homosexuality, all of that. All of that's more money. So, that's what happened. That's why they got to do it. So that's where they come in, the OGs and them people. They come in strictly to let them know, hey, this is how we get money. This is who we get money from. And this is how we're exploiting the situation. And everybody's okay with the exploitation because they get sponsorships and money and endorsements. And they get to have access to everything, but not like a real access to it, because it's all coming filtered through whatever order and whatever group, gang, and it could be any type of gang, sorority, fraternity, government, cops, army. It's all part of the same system. You know what I mean? And it perpetuates itself by birthing more people to keep up the system. So it's an organism. It got to survive. It got to live. It's got to eat. You know what I mean? Like anything else. So those of us that's not a part of that system, you see, we're not a part of it. And so we created shit so we wouldn't have to sully ourselves with rocking with them. And that's where these people came from. That's why we created these orders and these people to have chivalry and shit, because we couldn't trust each other. It's that simple. Just like now. Most of us have never been directly hurt or assaulted by a Caucasian person, ever. People who assault call us nigga. We've been called nigga more times by our own people than anybody else in the world. We're the ones who feel sometimes got to be on alert when we're around a bunch of our own people. We do that. That's internal. And this is everybody. This is the niggas preying on niggas. They feel like that too, because they know what they doing. So they know they deserve it. See, back then we didn't have that. We had these niggas. And we was creating them, and they was doing it all. They was doing all the work. They was fighting all of our enemies. They was taking over our uncle's castle so we could go and get it. That's why they so loyal to it. That's why they look at us with disgust. Because they know we don't remember and they can't tell us. Or else the game is over. And they go back to the cave. They ain't trying to do that. They are not trying to do that. You heard? So they wind up setting up their own mafia. Yeah, that's where the Khazarians came from. I'm telling you, man, get the book. Making It a White Man. Get that book. Read that shit. Read these other books. White Cargo. They were slaves and they were white. Forgotten cause of the Civil War. Chosen people of the Caucasus. White Man Inheritance. You understand? The Delectable Negro. White. the white man and colonial capitalism and cannibalism. Get these books, man. Read this shit. And I'm telling white folk too, because I got a lot of white folk that watch. Like, read it too, and that way it'll stop. It'll, you know what I mean? Like, you won't raise a child to do this. I mean, this is helping all of us. Okay, so yeah, get that book, man. Get this book. Yeah, we are the kingdom. We didn't return. We remember what Granada really was, and we reading more about it and going back to it. Another alternative view of Granada is a book called "Debunking the Myth of a Andalusian Paradise." Yeah, read that book too. Read the opposite versions of what niggas say, and then when you read that, then go back and read the Alhambra by Washington Irving and watch how what he say in that book just knock out everything that this other nigga say. It's great. It's great to do comparative research like that. But yeah, you got to do that. You got to entertain the other opinions about who you are and your culture, so that way you don't get caught up and so defensive. Let these niggas say what they want. The most critical people in the world is Moors. So once you get over being criticized by them, you're good. Nobody more critical than them. Anybody else have any other questions before we close out? Definitely want to give thanks for everybody for coming through and the support, dealing with me with the clicks and all of that. I know be annoying, but again, I'm like 51, I'm about to be 52. I'm barely um dealing with this shit enough for it to be cohesive. So I'm just thankful I'm able to do what I can do, because again, it's really two people, one man, two people operation for real. Outside of all of you as the supporters. So I definitely give thanks and praise for everybody who's ever supported and come through. You know, I'm retooling everything, being close to True Year. So I'm retooling my joint. Big up to Sustain Brandon. Big up to two African brothers that's joined my coloring comic right now. Books right now. Big up to them. Hopefully I get all of this done soon, so I can move on to the other stuff. Definitely. So if you haven't already, please check out ADOT app. It's a great hub for Moorish American information, as well as a lot of stuff I can't put directly on YouTube. Definitely check out CordobaOrganics.com. I definitely appreciate it. You guys coming through with that. Again, don't get caught up in what these paid actors are saying about all of these places and these things, because they really cap. They really lying about all of it. It's all to the ends of cutting the fat off under the pseudo jurisdiction of an old program that has basically come online called Jasara and Nasara. I've been talking about that since years. So to see aspects of it come to fruition is really dope. So definitely check out the world's most dangerous comic book novel. Right now, I got it up on Google Play. Um, I also have an app. Go to www.aseerthetukateers.com, because up there I have the hardcover. You can order from there directly. So definitely give thanks for that. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Is there anything else? I think so. I think that's it for now. So yeah, if anybody has any questions, you can hit me up at houseofl@hotmail.com. Anybody that's watching in the future, if you want to leave a donation, you could do so through Cash App, the money sign, capital DS418.com. You definitely do that. I definitely appreciate it. Or through PayPal, you can go to duketears@gmail.com. And again, I really give a thanks for everybody that's been supporting. And next week we'll try to break down even more of this shit. Seem like every week you just gotta just keep decoding what these niggas are saying, because everything they saying is the opposite of what they was doing. When I saw the chick say, "What do people need with $5,000 a month?" I was like, "Wow, they got this chick. This chick is wildin'. They done scraping the bottom of the barrel now. You know, you thought Cardi B was bad. Like, damn." So yeah, man. Let's keep it going. The end is not yet. Long live the empire. Let's keep it up, man. You know, the longer we withstand, the less they can endure. All right. Pax et amor. Proconium Laudibus. Nobilis. Mortis.